She moved along the fence line while the sky was still pale and undecided. The world quiet enough that every sound felt louder than it should. Her boots brushed dry grass, and wire posts rose one by one like silent witnesses. She kept her breathing slow because fast breaths made the pain flare bright and sharp along her side. The cut had come earlier, sudden and careless, a slip of metal hidden where she did not expect it. And the moment stayed with her, replaying in her mind the sting, the warmth, the instant knowledge that something was wrong. She had pressed her hand there, felt wetness, and made a choice not to stop, not to call, not to look. Stopping would have meant sitting, and sitting would have meant admitting how deep it was. She told herself she had handled worse, that she had walked farther with less rest, that this land respected those who kept moving. The sun climbed inch by inch, turning the grass gold, and she focused on small things. The rhythm of her steps, the weight of the bag on her shoulder, the familiar shape of the trees ahead. Anything to keep her thoughts from drifting to the slow loss of strength she felt spreading through her limbs. She adjusted her jacket again, careful with the motion, feeling fabric stick. Then pull away. She did not let her face change, did not let herself flinch, because habit had taught her that showing pain invited questions, and questions led to delay. The camp waited beyond the rise. Voices would be there soon, and radios and morning routines. She pictured it clearly, the way she always did, as a promise of normalcy, that once she crossed that line, everything would settle back into place. Behind her, the ground darkened, where she stepped unnoticed by her eyes, but written clearly into the dust. She did not turn around. She did not think about what followed trails here, or who watched quietly from the edges of the tall grass. She only thought about reaching the gate, about handing over the supplies, about sitting down just for a moment where no one could see her side or the blood or the way her hands had begun to tremble despite her effort. The land listened as it always did, holding every sign, every scent, every secret, and she walked on, unaware that she was no longer alone, even though she felt very much that way. She crossed the rise, with legs that felt heavier than before each step, taking more thought than the last. The bag on her shoulder pulled down, and she adjusted it slowly, refusing to rush, because rushing made the world tilt. Her focus narrowed to the path ahead, a strip of worn earth leading toward the camp. She had walked it so many times that her feet knew it better than her mind did today, muscle memory carrying her forward when concentration began to slip. Warmth spread beneath her jacket, no longer sharp now but deep and constant, like a weight pressing inward. She pressed her arm tighter against her side and told herself again that it could wait, that she was almost there, that everything important came after duty. The sounds of morning drifted toward her, faint voices, metal clinking, the low hum of generators coming alive. Each sound felt distant, like it belonged to a different place. One she was watching through glass, her vision blurred at the edges, and she slowed just enough to steady herself, standing still for a breath. Then another. She counted them, carefully grounding herself in the present, refusing to let fear take shape. She thought about the cubs she had seen earlier in the week, how they had watched her from the shade, curious but calm, how their ears flicked at every sound, how the land raised them to notice what others missed. She smiled faintly at the thought, then shook it away. There was no time for distraction, not now, not when she could already feel strength leaking away unnoticed like water into sand. She stepped forward again, boots firm on the earth's shoulders. Squared posture, controlled. Anyone watching would see nothing wrong. They would see routine, confidence, the shape of someone who belonged here. But inside her body worked harder, heart pushing faster, breath coming shallow despite her effort. She told herself to hold on just a little longer, to reach the gate, to make it inside before the truth forced its way out. She did not look down, and she did not look back, and she did not hear the soft movement behind her, growing closer step by careful step. Drawn by a story she could not hide, the ground behind her carried the truth, patiently accepting each drop as it fell, darkening, the dust bending, the grass marking a clear path. Where she had passed moments before, the earth did not judge it, only remembered. Today, light breeze moved through the field, lifting scent and sound, carrying it outward beyond her awareness, beyond the limits of human attention, into the quieter, sharper world of those who lived close to the soil. Small shapes stirred in the shade, bodies, low ears, alert noses, testing the air. The smell was wrong, not prey, not danger, not familiar, yet urgent in a way that demanded notice. The cubs followed instinct before curiosity. Pause, stepping exactly where the ground was darker, where grass lay pressed and stained. their movements slow at first, then quicker as the trail remained unbroken. Them the story was simple. Something wounded had passed here recently, something known, something that did not run but walked. As if pretending nothing was wrong, they paused, often lifting their heads, listening, tasting the air, then returning to the line, their small tails flicking with tension, the sound of distant human voices pulling them forward just as strongly as the cementa trail led out of the tall grass, toward open ground, toward the place where metal and fire smells mixed with dust and oil, a place they had learned to watch from afar. Their pace slowed again, as recognition settled in. This was not a hunt. This was not play. This was warning. One cub pressed its nose deeper into the earth and huffed softly, a sound of confusion and concern. The others gathering close, bodies brushing as they continued to gather head. The camp waited, alive and unaware, and between it and the cubs, the trail remained. Fresh, clear, and impossible to ignore, asking to be followed, asking to be, and cubs moved as one now, no longer scattered, no longer playful. Their steps measured, ears forward, bodies low to the ground, as if the land itself guided them along the trail. Every few strides, they paused, lifting their heads, eyes scanning the open space. Ahead, the camp lay closer now, and the smells grew stronger. Metal, smoke, human presence layered over the sharp copper scent that led them forward. They recognized that scent, even if they did not understand it fully. It belonged to the quiet human, the one who walked slowly, who never chased, who spoke softly and watched them with patience. That recognition changed everything. Their pace quickened, small paws drumming softly against the earth's grass, brushing their bellies as they moved from cover to cover, the trail pulling them out of the safety of shade into open light. The cubs hesitated at the edge of the clearing, instinct clashing with caution. The open space felt wrong, exposed, but the scent did not stop it. Grew stronger, pulled heavy. Near the place where humans gathered, one cub stepped forward first, then another, until they stood together, visible and alert, tails stiff, ears high. They watched her from a distance, saw the way she stood too still, the way her arm pressed tight against her side, the way her head lifted slightly as if listening to something she could not hear. Something was wrong. A low sound left one cub, not a call, not a play sound, but something uncertain and sharp. The others answered, shifting closer, eyes never leaving her. They did not rush, they did not scatter, they did what instinct demanded. They stayed and watched and waited for the moment when warning would be louder than fear. The scent told them time mattered. The cubs crept closer, until the blood was visible to them, dark against fabric. Their bodies tensed, muscles coiled, energy built. One cub drew in a breath and lifted its head higher than the others, and in that moment the choice was made, not by thought but by something older. The alarm broke free, and the quiet morning changed forever. The sound reached her before she understood it, a sharp, urgent cry, cutting through the soft noise of morning. She stiffened for a moment, heart jumping. Before she forced herself to stay calm, she turned her head slowly, eyes searching the edge of the clearing, and there they were, small shapes against the grass, bodies tight and alert, eyes locked on her. For a second she almost smiled, thinking it was curiosity that they had wandered too close again, but the sound came once more, louder this time, and something in it made her chest tighten. People around her began to notice, conversations paused, hands stilled, heads turned toward the noise, but she stayed where she was, refusing to draw attention, refusing to move. The cubs stepped closer and she felt a strange pull of recognition, the way they mirrored her stillness, the way they refused to look away. Her side throbbed harder now, as if responding to the call, heat spreading downward, and she shifted her weight slightly, the movement too careful to slow. One cub lowered its head and sniffed the ground near her boots, then lifted its face and cried again, this time not looking at her but past her, toward the camp. The warning was no longer just for her. A hush fell over the clearing, tension replacing routine. Radios crackled, voices sharpened, boots shifted position. She felt suddenly exposed, as if the jacket no longer hid anything, as if the land itself had peeled her secret open. Her breath came shallow, and she swallowed hard, steadying herself, lifting her chin, forcing a calm expression even as the world tilted gently at the edges. She did not yet sit, she did not yet ask for help, but the moment was slipping away, and she knew it. The cubs stayed close, unmoving, determined, and the truth hovered between them all, waiting to be seen. The adults arrived cautiously, first at the edge of the clearing, then closer, reading the scene with trained eyes but missing what the cubs already knew. Their focus split between the animals and the humans standing too still. At the center she felt their presence like weight pressing in from all sides, voices, low controlled hands hovering near radios and tools. She kept her posture steady shoulders squared the familiar mask of capability firmly in place. The cubs did not retreat, they shifted closer, instead forming a loose circle around her legs, their bodies small but deliberate, tails, stiff eyes, bright and unblinking. They were not afraid, and that alone unsettled the humans watching. One ranger took a step forward and paused, uncertain, unsure whether to address her or the cubs. The morning air felt tight, charged with something uncertain. She tried to speak, then stopped, realizing her voice might betray her steadiness. She swallowed and breathed through her nose, counting heartbeats, grounding herself in habit. The cubs' noses worked constantly now, one brushing near her boot, another tracing the line where the scent grew strongest. They did not touch her wound, but they did not need Toalo. Murmur spread through the group, questions forming but not yet spoken, everyone sensing that something was wrong but unable to name it. She shifted again, just slightly, and the movement drew sharp eyes, a darker stain visible now against the edge of her jacket, no longer fully hidden. One of the cubs pressed its body lightly against her calf, anchoring her in place. The contact unexpected and grounding. She felt her knees threaten to soften, and she leaned into stillness instead. The lead ranger followed the cub's gaze down, then back up, then down again, understanding dawning slowly. His hand lifted, palm open, a signal to hold. The cubs watched him carefully, weighing intention, instinct guiding them. They did not move away, but they did not escalate. They had done their part. Her breath grew shallow, and she could no longer deny the dizziness she felt. Heat rushed, then fade. Her vision narrowed, and she knew the moment had arrived. The land seemed to hold its breath when she finally lowered herself to the ground. It was not sudden, not dramatic, but deliberate, controlled, a quiet surrender to what could no longer be hidden. Hands reached for her immediately, voices sharpened, urgency replacing confusion. Someone knelt beside her, and the cubs stepped back, just enough to allow it, but no farther. They stayed alert, eyes following every movement, guardians, until the humans fully understood what the land and the cubs had known all along. The cry that had started it all rose again, this time joined by the others, a chorus of raw, unfiltered sound carrying through the clearing and beyond, alerting every living thing nearby to the alarm. She could feel it in her chest, a vibration that shook more than the ears, that traveled into the bones and made her pulse jump sharper and faster than the wound already demanded. The cubs lifted their heads high, ears twitching, eyes bright and fixed on her, as if their small bodies contained the power to hold the sound steady until it reached where it needed to go. Humans froze, momentarily caught between curiosity and concern, watching the animals act as if they understood more than the adults did, yet unwilling to intervene until absolutely necessary. She tried to breathe slower, grounding herself against the thrum of alarm, trying to stay present even as weakness bled into her muscles and made her legs tremble beneath her. The clearing seemed to shrink around her, sound echoing off the tents and vehicles and metal surfaces. The cry rippling outward and tugging attention like threads, pulled through the air. One cub pressed closer, nudging her gently, and she leaned against, finding strength in its small warmth, her hand brushing fur as though reaching for a tether to steadiness. The humans finally moved toward her, careful, deliberate steps, voices low and calm. One reached for her shoulder, while others circled closer, following the cub's lead. The alarm continued in waves, forcing awareness into every corner of the space, calling attention not just to her, but to the truth she had tried to hide. The cubs held their positions, eyes unblinking, tails coiled, tension radiating outward, until the humans understood that this warning was more than instinct. It was demand, it was command, it was protection. And in that moment she realized she could no longer carry the burden alone. The cry had summoned help, and the cubs had delivered it. Without hesitation, without fear, without question, the adults moved swiftly now, boots crunching against the dry ground, voices sharp with urgency but tempered by training, eyes scanning for danger. Even as they reached for her hands and shoulders to steady, her radios crackled and voices carried instructions across the clearing, people running to positions, checking equipment, and calling for medical support, all moving in response to the alarm the cubs had raised. She felt hands on her, now firm and grounding, pressing gently against her arm and back, keeping her upright, guiding her attention back to the present, back to the humans around her. Cubs did not retreat, they shifted just enough to give space, but stayed close, circling protectively, their small bodies moving in sync. Instinct and loyalty fused in every step. Blood on her jacket, dark and unmistakable, could no longer be hidden, and eyes trained on the signal realized immediately what had happened and what must be done. A medic knelt in front of her, hands ready, assessing the wound, gentle but swift, the cubs, watching silently, as if to ensure she remained safe, as if they understood the care she needed even if she could not ask. The humans moved efficiently, voices low but urgent, communicating every movement, sharing information as the cubs remained alert. Silent guardians breathing the tension of the clearing. She let herself lean into the hands holding her, feeling weakness wash over her, letting the truth she had tried to hide finally settle into action. The cubs' noses lifted, sniffing the air, occasionally tails twitching, but their focus never left her. They had delivered the warning, and now they stayed to ensure it was answered. The clearing felt alive with urgency and attention, every element in place. Every gaze focused the cubs, proud, silent heroes, and she finally allowed herself to accept that she would not have to face this alone. She sank fully to the ground, letting her body rest against the firm earth, hands reaching for her side. The pain, sharp but bearable now, carried in the weight of relief rather than fear. The cubs stayed close, their small bodies brushing against her legs, eyes bright and watchful, their presence grounding, steadying, reminding her she was not alone. Humans moved around her with purpose, gentle but efficient hands, checking her wound, voices calm and direct, coordinating care and support, while the cubs circled near, keeping distance, yet refusing to leave. She felt the first flush of dizziness fade, replaced by awareness of every movement around her, the soft murmur of concern, the careful efficiency of training, and the quiet insistence of the cubs that she remained safe. One cub pressed its head lightly against her knee, and she reached down, brushing fur between her fingers, a small, grounding touch that drew a fragile smile across her face. The adults worked quickly, stabilizing her wound, preparing to carry her to shelter, their focus unwavering but now tempered with care and respect for the bond between her and the cub. She breathed slowly, allowing herself to accept help, her chest rising and falling in rhythm with the cub's gentle presence, a rhythm that reminded her of trust, of instinct, of loyalty. That clearing felt different now, tension lingering but softened by action, by understanding, by the shared recognition that the alarm had been heard and answered. She leaned back against the earth and closed her eyes, letting the warmth of morning settle around her, the cubs remaining nearby, vigilant guardians who had done what she could not ask for in that quiet space. She realized the truth: the cubs had saved her, not just by raising the alarm, but by ensuring she would be seen, understood, and protected. And as hands lifted her carefully, the cubs followed step for step, eyes never leaving her, the clearing holding the story of what had passed and what had been preserved.